The Bible certainly is one of, if not, I mean, it is the book. I believe in God. I am Christian. I'm a Protestant. I'm very proud of it. Presbyterian, to be exact.
I'm Presbyterian. Boy, that's down the middle of the road, folks.
Donald Trump opened about his faith during an interview with a Christian network, saying he is a Christian and that he's a Sunday church person. I believe in God. I am Christian. I think the Bible is certainly, it is the book. It is the thing, Trump told Christian Broadcasting Network's David Brody. Donald Trump mentioned God in public remarks during his first 200 days, more than Presidents Barack Obama and George W. Bush over the same period of their presidencies. This phenomenon raises curiosity, especially considering global events related to the concept of the end times. As Trump identifies as a Christian, this raises questions about the nature and purpose of the messages he wants to convey to the Christian community. This video is bound to shed light on Donald Trump's nuances. If anyone thought that Christian nationalism would decline with President Donald Trump out of power, they were mistaken. Christian nationalists believe in general that America is Christian, that the government should keep it that way, and that Trump was, and is, their best hope to accomplish that. The former president's rallies were the theater of religious revival. But what are the underlying beliefs? Let us start with Trump's inauguration. Not many people will have heard of Pastor Paula White, but she was one of the clergies nominated to pray for Trump at his inauguration in 2017. Pastor White is a leading exponent of the so-called health, wealth, and prosperity movement. She preaches the prosperity gospel, which teaches that God wants people to be rich and that He makes them wealthy as a blessing. Conspicuous wealth is evidence of God's personal reward for those with faith. Paula White teaches that God rewards faithful people who invest in God's promised providence. You invest by making deposits, your faith, prayers, and gifts of money to God. If you want to be healthy and wealthy, all you need do is give and believe very hard, and your heart's desires will come true. This is believed to be a spiritual Ponzi scheme. Punters believe that the more they invest, the greater their likely rewards. Other clergy, selected by Trump to pray for him at his inauguration, included the conservative Roman Catholic Cardinal Timothy Dolan, outspoken on pro-life issues, and the Reverend Franklin Graham, who once called Islam a wicked and evil religion. But not all religions were wicked in Trump's eyes, as he forged a close alliance with Israel. It was also Franklin Graham who told millions of America's evangelicals in 2016 that they could vote for Trump with a clean conscience, since Trump was comparable to the ancient Persian ruler. But who was Cyrus the Great, and why did Graham make this comparison? Cyrus the Great was an all-conquering Persian king. Around 550 BC, he overthrew the tyrannical Babylonians who had persecuted the Jews, driving them into captivity and stripping them of their freedoms and customs. Having conquered the Babylonians, Cyrus released all their captives. Moreover, he respected the traditions and religions of the lands he captured. His regime offered liberation and devolved government to former captives of Babylon. Cyrus also ruled with a lean, decentralized administration. This analogy may seem surprising, given the differences between the two leaders. For American evangelicals and fundamentalists, the government of Cyrus, 2,500 years ago, was one that worked to the advantage of all its subjects, and especially God's chosen people. Cyrus is the only foreign ruler referred to as Messiah, literally, His anointed one, in the Old Testament, Isaiah 45:1, and is the only non-Jewish figure in the Bible to be given this accolade. In claiming Trump as Cyrus, Franklin Graham was saying that evangelicals and fundamentalists could now rid themselves of a once dominant, centralizing liberal hegemony and reclaim their religious freedoms. They could do this by voting for someone who doesn't share their evangelical faith and values. Trump is presented as simultaneously pagan and the Messiah ruler. Washington, D.C. is often portrayed in evangelical press and social media as a simulacrum of a centralizing Babylon. And you don't need to be a genius to work out that Trump is the Cyrus who delivers all God-fearing Americans from that awful prospect of the whore of Babylon referenced in Book of Revelation, living in the White House. Drain the swamp and lock her up were implicit religious rallying calls, not just injudicious hate speech. These were the chants of the self-proclaimed righteous chants that swung across the bandwidth of rage, hate, and exuberant joy. References to the end of the world pepper the Old Testament, like in the book of Daniel, but find their most fulsome expression in the book of Revelation, the last book of the New Testament. The apocalypse forecast by the writer John, exiled on Patmos, envisages a day at the end of time following all-out war when God will decree the fates of all individual humans according to the good and evil of their earthly lives. The term apocalypse is normally used in theology to refer to the world state during the post-historic era of God's overt 1,000-year reign, immediately preceding the end of the world. In such thinking, chaos and social meltdown are essentially ordained. In fact, the more chaos, the merrier, since if the world really does implode, then the return of Jesus to wrap up history will have been realized. Polarization is mesmerizing here, and the Trump circus seems to provide a cocktail of sharply contrasting emotional states and values. His rallies are a heady mix of rage and joy, celebration and condemnation. The speeches, which are highly reminiscent of feverish sermons at a revivalist rally, combine damnation and salvation, dark and light. The medium is the message. However, the messages need to be noted, since they codify the enduring power of Trump's appeal. Put bluntly, they reach back a century to the kinds of political speeches one might have encountered in early emergent fascism of Italy or Germany, which played on aspects of sacred symbols, rituals, and civic religion in order to fuel nationalism and justify racism. Trump rallies are the theater of religious revival. The joy of these events allows followers to forget the fuel of fury that otherwise propels them outside the rally. Critics of Trump usually only see the fury, but to understand Trump's appeal, the key ingredient is revivalist joy. The role of evangelicals in this revivalist circus is critical. Historians of religion know that religious revivals promise a golden future, yet do so by seeking backward-looking legitimacy. Somewhere in the past is a perfection that the present and future desperately craves. One might imagine that the threat of a climate crisis could reach back to the idyllic pre-fall Eden, but it doesn't. It heralds the hope that the world will deteriorate even faster, and that its destruction will mark a new beginning for those who are saved. Yet as pollsters in a Pew Research survey recently discovered, evangelicals actually have very few problems with the science and mathematics of climate crisis. What evangelicals reject is the perceived Trojan horse of the climate crisis, concealing the alien forces of inclusivism, wokeism, left-wing liberalism, and a whole army of values and ideas they want to reject. This is a case of throwing the proverbial baby out with the bathwater. Trump's quasi-religious political revivalist rallies are not arenas given over to celebrations of mildness and moderation. Nor will Trump's rallies cease to prophesy and deliver the breakdown of ordinary social order. For Trump's followers seeking salvation and vindication, it is literally the case that societal breakdown only serves to demonstrate just how right Trump is. The nightmare, then, is that the hope of a civil society rooted in reasoned moderation will finally be overrun by forces of hate and rage weaponized with unprincipled fervor and zeal. Armageddon and the Trumpocalypse merely show the ends justify the means. Who would have imagined that such a crucial 21st century American election would tap into speculative prophecies from an exiled mystic within a cave on the island of Patmos during the 1st century? Back then, in John's Revelation, it seemed the end of the world was near. Therein lies the hope. 2,000 years on, Armageddon and the apocalypse are still pending. What Trump and his followers anticipate may not come to pass. A nightmare scenario is only the mind preparing and planning for awful fears that probably won't transpire. But for some, the nightmare is already a reality, and they see Trump as the ultimate enemy of humanity. During the presidency of Donald Trump, some people have made claims that he is the Antichrist. Whether this is true or not, the fact that such a claim exists shows how polarized and divided the world has become under his influence. However, it is essential to recognize that simply because Trump makes certain statements or takes particular actions, it does not inherently make him an Antichrist. The idea of the Antichrist is rooted in religious beliefs and is not a scientific or factual assertion that can be proven or disproven. While some people may perceive certain statements or actions by Trump as potentially related to the concept of the Antichrist, it is crucial to analyze these claims within the context of religious beliefs and the broader historical and cultural understanding of the Antichrist. The second coming of Jesus Christ, also known as the parousia, is a central concept in Christianity. It is the belief that Jesus will return to earth in glory and power to establish his kingdom and judge the living and the dead. The idea of the Antichrist is often associated with this event, as the Antichrist is believed to be a figure that will oppose Jesus during his return. In religious texts, the Antichrist is described as a deceiver who will lead people astray and cause great suffering. The second coming of Jesus Christ is expected to be preceded by various signs and events, including the rise of the Antichrist. The concept of the second coming and the Antichrist has been interpreted and discussed in various ways throughout history. Different religious scholars and communities have their understanding of the signs and events leading up to the second coming. Recently, the message about the second coming has been brought up in the context of Mecca, one of the holiest cities in Islam. While the connection between the second coming and Mecca may be significant for some, it is essential to remember that the interpretation of religious texts and prophecies can vary widely among different religious communities and scholars. The idea of the second coming, or the return of Jesus Christ, has been a significant topic of discussion and debate among Christians for centuries. However, its connection to Mecca, one of the holiest cities in Islam, has only recently gained attention. This connection has raised questions about the interpretation of religious texts and prophecies among various religious communities and scholars. The second coming is believed by many Christians to be a future event in which Jesus Christ will return to earth to establish his kingdom and judge the living and the dead. This belief is rooted in various biblical passages, such as the Book of Revelation and the Gospel of Matthew. Mecca, on the other hand, holds immense importance for Muslims as the birthplace of the Prophet Muhammad and the location of the Kaaba, the holiest site in Islam. The city is also the site of the annual Hajj pilgrimage, which every Muslim is expected to undertake at least once in their lifetime if they are physically and financially capable. The connection between the second coming and Mecca has led some to explore the possibility of a relationship between Christianity and Islam, as well as the potential for a shared prophetic narrative. However, it is important to remember that religious texts and prophecies can be interpreted in various ways, and the understanding of these events may differ significantly among different religious communities and scholars. For instance, some Christian scholars argue that the second coming is a direct fulfillment of biblical prophecies and that its connection to Mecca is purely coincidental. Others believe that the second coming could be a unifying event for all Abrahamic faiths, bringing about a new era of peace and understanding among people of different religions. In contrast, Muslim scholars generally maintain that the second coming is not a part of Islamic belief, as the religion is focused on the life and teachings of the Prophet Muhammad and the 5 pillars of Islam. They argue that any connection between the second coming and Mecca is a matter of speculation and conjecture, rather than a firmly established religious doctrine.